that we needed a debt relief. Last year, we refused to go for it. But we opened this year by majorly the Treasury Office saying that the biggest move they're going to make this year is ask for a debt relief from any of our creditors. Let's look at it then. As we opened January 2021, the first announcement that we got from the Treasury is that we did get 32 billion shillings debt relief from the Paris Club of countries. We celebrated it, but then at the back end of that, we didn't know exactly where it was coming from, because the IMF looks like it was part of this push for us to get that debt relief. As our analysts called it, that our goose was already cooked and we had to go for it. Now, at the back end of that, Yatani was forced to enter 3.4 trillion shillings into our debt numbers, which we do know right now. Before 2021, he kept on saying was at 7 trillion. Fine. So that means that we started 2021 with it being at 10.4 trillion, despite his approach of saying, well, we are fine and we're going to gradually enter that into our debt profile. Regardless, it means that we're still at 10.4 trillion, because him accepting it means that he's actually saying that our debt numbers are at 10.4 trillion. Fine, Yatani, we do accept. Despite the fact that you're saying that you're going to gradually enter it into a debt profile, it seems again that the only way out for you is that you have to go again and increase our debt ceiling from what we do know of it, 9 trillion to 12 trillion, because we do know that plan is fully underway. Good. This morning, we start with this announcement that China, who is our biggest creditor to exactly what happens in this country, is ready to listen to Kenya for a debt relief process. Let's get the numbers this morning before we go to the data that we have for you as we talk about the numbers and exactly how we're going to understand them this morning. Now, first thing that you have to understand in terms of the numbers that we're going to for from the G20 countries are this. Good. Is that we have to get an additional 40.6 billion debt relief from our G20 countries. Now, we do know that China is Kenya's biggest bilateral lender with 109.4 billion shillings. That was supposed to mature this year, and this includes the Naivasha railway line amount of money that we took from China just to get that project underway. Now, we do know that we are struggling already with our debt crisis in the country. And you have to look at it. If you look at the debt to our GDP, then you have to talk about 69.2% of the GDP vis-a-vis our debt, as we do not of it. And that is not factoring in the recent 3.4 trillion that was added to our debt profile that will push this number further. Talk about starting it on a high note, and we're going to keep a tabs on this story. And should we get this debt relief from our G20 countries, then what becomes of our credit rating, which we do know has been on the worst end? All right, so this morning I just want us to look at exactly what is composed of that domestic debt. And if you look at that data that we're giving you right now, if you look at where we are in terms of that composition of domestic debt, you're going to see that if you look at where we are, treasury bonds are exactly what make the biggest composition of that, coming at 73.56%. Now, if you look at other domestic debt, it's sort of just goes by 0.69% of that composition. But again, if you really want to come to where we are, treasury bills excluding repos, we're at 24.7% with an overdraft at Central Bank of Kenya at 1.37%, something that the IMF wants it included in our debt profile, and it seems as if they've got it. Now let's cross over to Kenya's gross domestic debt this morning, and you have to look at it, and the numbers are going to show you exactly where we are. And we're looking at it from 31st March 2020 up to 31st Dec 2020. They're going to see those bigger numbers of exactly where we are. And you can see exactly what we did in March at the onset of the coronavirus pandemic. That's when we took a lot of debt just to fight the coronavirus pandemic, which is exactly why, again, we are going back to China just to tell them, because of the coronavirus pandemic, you gotta give us that debt relief, all the way to 40.6 billion of the 109.4 billion that is supposed to mature to that biggest lender to Kenya. And I'm talking about China. Look at that number in 31st of March 2020. That's a key talking point on exactly how you want to understand as why Kenya is going for that debt relief. Now, let's talk about, therefore, on exactly what is made up of tax performance in Kenya 2019-2020, because we're only talking about this morning because our revenue collection numbers have been really going down. Let's talk about rental income. And again, there's a bigger headline here that we're going to talk about before we end this week, because, well, the rental income numbers have also been a mismatch. And we're going to tell you exactly what that is. But you can actually see where we are paying at 20%, withholding tax at 25%, corporation tax at 30%. Now, let's talk about that decline, therefore. Domestic VAT has declined 7%. Domestic excise tax has declined 6.4%. Oil and fuel taxes 1.4%. Now let's put that into proper perspective again this morning. Now we do know that as of January 1st, 2021, domestic VAT is going to jump, domestic excise is going to jump, oil and fuel taxes, we started this morning, we're also going to talk about that. Now we do know they have been adjusted upwards, and the Treasury Office is saying with these new numbers, they do expect that the collections are going to jump up by 5.5 billion shillings. That has to happen, because if it doesn't happen, then again, we're going to talk about bigger effects of exactly what our debt numbers are going to look like, because we gotta do that because we need that money. Wow. That's where we start from. Now, Britain have appointed a new CEO. We spoke about them starting this new year with Wairegi still at the helm of that office. But this morning, they've announced that Zimbabwean I just want to get this name correctly. Tavaziva. Wow. Tavaziva as its new CEO, effective February 1st, 2021, is an actual scientist, but he's been working in Kenya, if you really want to know, because he's been previously the CEO of Old Mutual Operations in Kenya. Now, this pretty much sort of sprites away from what other local insurers have been doing, appointing Kenyans at that helm, with now Tavaziva taking over as a Zimbabwean, effective February 1st, 2021. So we're going to see Wairegi is still holding on the NSA listed insurer up to all the way to the end of January 2021. Now the Apata deal, again, is supposed to cost Kenyans 40 billion shillings. Now, let's go back to 1984 when the government was in the business of business. They took over this meat products. We're talking about the Halal Meat Products Limited in Ngong without compensation. And they were planning to expand it. In fact, there were plans underway to even give it a 27 million loan that was supposed to see the Halal Meat Products Limited in Ngong expanded. Now, Controller Budget is selling us that, well, they're on course to winning a court case that is going to see them awarded 40 billion shillings, because as we do know of it, it was dead a long time ago. That is another headline that we're waking up to this morning in terms of the areas that you need to know this morning, and we're going to put that into proper perspective. All we do know, 40 billion shillings again into what the government has to pay in terms of compensation of the halal meat products, a case that comes all the way from 1984. And you remember during this period, that was when Kenya was going through an entire drought period, and so they took it over without compensation. Now they're back in court, and it seems it's going to cost you another 40 billion shillings, because as it stands, they are on course to winning that case. 20146 is your SMS line at Metropole TVKE across all your social media platforms. Hashtag business. I am Akia Simba. Let's get our 2 hours underway, shan't we?